Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 5 new really strong picks here in patch 7.19 and break down how you're going to want to play them, the build, the runes, and the masteries you're going to want to take on them because, for example, Azir did get that rework in this patch. He's actually a pretty strong pick right now, but the way you're wanting to play him in this patch is a little bit different than how you'd want to play him before. So with that being said, guys, let's get started. So starting off with Azir here, Azir is actually a pretty strong pick in 7.19. To put this into perspective, in 7.18, he was sitting at around a 44-45% win rate. It was pretty low. In this patch right now, he's sitting at around a 51 or 52% win rate. So his win rate went up by about 7, 8, 9% from last patch to this patch. And that's with him getting those changes. That's with his kit changing a little bit and people still having to get used to the changes. So I think as this patch goes on, that win rate could go up to around 52-53%. And I think that if you are someone who has played Azir in the past, then you should be looking to pick him back up in this patch because he's a very strong pick right now. So with the Azir rework, a lot of his power shifted into his DPS damage more so than his burst damage with his Q. His Q's damage is still there, but it's not going to be your main damage now on Azir. Your main damage is going to be coming out from the DPS of your W. You're going to have insane attack speed from that ability now because of the new interaction it has. Whenever you do have 3 of your soldiers up, you're going to gain an insane amount of attack speed with that. So it just makes you do a ton of damage in mid to late game team fights. So with Azir's damage being more focused now on the DPS during the mid to late game team fights, the build from a lot of pro players has changed from last patch to this patch. So what a lot of players are going now on Azir for their build is they're rushing a Morello's instead of a Nashor's, and a lot of players are completely ignoring the Nashor's in this patch. They're not even building it on Azir. They're going for Morello's, they're taking some attack speed in their runes, and they're going for Berserker Greaves as their boots. So with the new passive on your W, when you have the 3 soldiers up, you gain that attack speed, and therefore you don't really need to go for Nashor's anymore because the attack speed on it isn't going to be as useful as it was before. And as well, if you do go for Morello's and you don't go for the Nashor's after that, then you're actually going to have a much stronger mid-game power spike. You go Morello's, Berserkers, and then you go for like a Liandry's Void Staff. So you hit a really nice mid-game power spike with something like that Liandry's. So it does allow Azir to just power spike a little bit earlier on into the game, and it does allow him to do quite a bit more damage in mid-game team fights. Now for the runes and masteries on Azir, for the runes, you're going to want to run some attack speed marks in there, and then everything else is pretty standard. For the masteries, you're going to want to run a 12-18-0 page, taking the Thunderlords as your keystone mastery. And then for the ability maxing, I'm pretty sure this did not change. You're still going to want to max out your Q first, your W second, and then your E last. Now, if we move on to taking a look at another champion in 7.19 that got some very nice changes, it's Veigar. So Veigar got some really good changes in this patch to his auto attack range. He also got a change to his W, which was the biggest one, to where whenever you do get 50 stacks of your passive now, your W cooldown drops by 10%. So this means in mid to late game team fights, your W's on a 2 or 3 second cooldown, doing around 1,000 damage every 2 to 3 seconds. So although your W isn't the easiest ability to hit, it's pretty easy to dodge. If your team does have some good crowd control, then the amount of damage you can get out with that W is going to be insane. And also, since it's only on a 2 or 3 second cooldown, you can really use that as a zoning tool as well in team fights. You don't always have to hit it, but you can just always be throwing that out, looking to zone. And because it's on such a short cooldown, you don't really have to worry about just spamming that out in mid to late game team fights. Now, the way a lot of people are playing Veigar in this patch, and I'm pretty sure Froggen started this in solo queue, I'm not 100% sure on that, but he's been playing this kind of new playstyle on Veigar in solo queue for the past few weeks. What he's doing is he's rushing Moby Boots on Veigar. Now, the reason you do this is because it makes getting picks with your E very easy during mid-game teamfights, and it also allows you to roam really nicely in the early game and look for those picks with your E. Moby Boots on Veigar is just very strong strong. It allows you to dodge pretty well at the start of team fights as well, and you can just dodge a lot of skill shots with that in the laning phase. So I think that by going Moby Boots on Veigar, you can get a lot of picks with that E and just easily burst down the enemy, because when they're in your E, they're gonna have to flash out. If they don't have flash and you do have a few items on Veigar, then it's pretty much a guaranteed one shot, especially if it's on a squishy target. Now for the build on Veigar, there's kind of two different builds that are going around right now. The first one, and the one that Froggen is using, is he's going for a Lichbane Rush. Now I think this is pretty good if you can actually get use out of that Lichbane during mid-game team fights. For example, if the enemy does have quite a few short-range champions that are going to be trying to get up into your face, then going for a Lichbane is going to be a pretty good idea, because you will be able to weave in those auto attacks. But if the enemy team does have a very long-range team comp, if you're not really going to be able to get safely in range to use your auto attacks at all during team fights, then going for a Morello's as your first item is going to be the better option there. The Lichbane also does give you that extra bit of movement speed, so along with the Mobies, it does allow you to look for those picks with your stun and just set up a lot of plays during the mid game. For the runes and masteries on Veigar, the rune page is a pretty standard AP page, and then a lot of players right now, they're taking the Storm Raider Surge over something like the Thunderlords or the Deathfire Touch, just because with Veigar, you have to get pretty close up to deal your damage, and you do have a very easy time proccing that Storm Raider. So once you move up to deal your damage, you get that burst off, and then you get the Storm Raider's proc, so you can either back off or just dodge abilities, because he's a short range champion. So if you are going to be able to proc that Storm Raiders consistently, then it's just going to be a very good mastery on the champion. For the ability maxing on Veigar, Q first, E second, and then W last. You actually don't want to max your W second on Veigar. I feel like this is a pretty common mistake for new Veigar players, mainly due to the fact that your W actually doesn't really have that great of a base damage increase. It's got a 1.0 AP scaling on it, and therefore you don't really need to max that out second. You're going to be getting a lot of damage from it just because of the AP ratio, and you're going to want to max your E second because the stun duration on your E increases by a lot once you do put points into it, so it's just a more viable option to max your E second instead of your W. And the final champion in this video that did get some sort of a rework in this patch is going to be Xin Zhao. So Xin also did see an increase in win rate for this patch. I think that his new kit is a lot stronger than his old kit. He's got a lot more utility in his new kit with his W and with his ultimate as well. So overall, he's a much stronger champion here in patch 7.19. So far in 7.19, most players are actually playing him wrong. As for the build that you want to be running on Xin Zhao, you don't actually want to be going Blood Razor anymore on Xin Zhao, and that is the most common build that players are doing right now. You actually want to be going for the Red Smite Warrior, and the reason you want to do this in this patch is because you don't really need the attack speed from the Blood Razor. You get the free attack speed whenever you use your E, and you get 40% attack speed at rank 1 with your E for 5 seconds, so that's actually a pretty long duration, and therefore you're just going to have plenty of attack speed from your E and whenever you use that. So by going the Warrior, it's just going to allow you to do quite a bit more DPS damage in the early to mid game. Now for the builds on Xin Zhao, you can go for a few different builds in this patch. You can go for an Assassin build where you go the Warrior, the Youmu's, the Trini Force, and then you can go even a Rage Blade. That build is definitely quite a lot more risky than the other build though, and I would only recommend going for like a full damage build on the champion if you are snowballing super hard in the early game. A more safer build though, and I'd say a more viable build, is going for the Warrior, going for a Trini Force, and then after that transitioning into tank. So something like a Dead Man's, a Spirit Visage, and then a Guardian Angel to round out your build is probably what you're going to want to be doing in most of your games in this patch. Now for the ability maxing on Xin Zhao, what you're going to want to do is take your E at level 1. It grants you that attack speed 40% for 5 seconds, so this will allow you to very easily clear out your first buff. At level 2, it does depend on what camp you're going to next as to what ability you take next. So if you're doing another single target camp, like if you're going from buff to buff, then take your Q at level 2. But if you're doing something like Raptors or Wolves, then take your W at level 2 because that will provide you with a little bit more AoE damage. And then for your maxing, you're going to want to max your W first, your Q second, and then your E last. For the runes and masteries, I'll just put them up on screen here. I'm not going to go into detail about them because I'm pretty sure these are just very standard AD attack speed pages that you're going to want to run on most of your AD champions. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. Hopefully this did provide you with some pretty good information on how to play these new reworked or buffed champions in this patch. A lot of players are still playing them wrong, so with this video you should be able to have the upper hand and know what's best on these champions in 7.19. So with that being said, guys, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already, and I will see you in my next video.